Hello everyone, thank you first of all for attending today. This action research work has been led by Nelson and Colne College Group in partnership with Runshaw College. As Lou said, we're bid partners in the Centre for Excellence. I'm the project coordinator, Georgina, and today I'm joined by two of the project's advanced practitioners, Kate Griffiths and Nick Waldron. So our initial research question was, how do students respond to a team-based competitive starter activity across a course of 6 weeks?
Next slide. Right, when we analysed the data that was collected during the 6-week trial, there were lots of findings that stood out. The two that are listed on this slide are two that appealed to us as teachers, things that we'd like to see in our classrooms. The first one, students became far more vocal, possibly because of the informal nature of the activity or the start of the lesson, but they were discussing problems amongst their teams and they were asking questions of each other and the teachers, and that then led to an improved teacher-student relationship. The second one, students, from our own experience, students can sometimes struggle to visualise the reward or the benefits of the maths they're studying. A grade 4 can be 12 months away and it's difficult for them to see it. In this activity, the students were quite happily, voluntarily selecting to do maths over general knowledge. And we believe that's because the rewards, albeit a couple of extra points, was immediate. And they could see it, they could understand it, they knew what they were getting for choosing maths. And that led to them choosing to do maths over a general knowledge question. The quote at the bottom, I'll just give you a minute to read it. That's one of a handful of quotes from teachers who fully engaged with the activity, and they used any questions, particularly the problem-solving questions that students had struggled with. They then took those questions and used them and developed them in the main part of their lesson.
So the entire research process with this piece of work was undertaken in collaboration with our network partners. We decided at an initial network meeting last summer that the biggest barrier to our learners is their motivation and engagement. So once we decided that was our theme, we developed together the idea of students working in collaborative competition to try and improve engagement in the classroom. The core research team then took this idea and developed the finer details. We were really inspired by De Napoli's 2018 article, which you'll be able to see the reference at the end of the slides, where he used a basketball-themed activity in the maths classroom. I'm going to leave the finer details to the actual activity to Kate in the next slides. But across 6 of our network partner colleges, teachers implemented the starter activity that we designed across a 6-week process. We asked teachers and students to complete a pre-questionnaire at the start of the 6 weeks and then a post-questionnaire following the intervention. Teachers were also asked to complete a weekly report to try and track some attendance and engagement across the 6 weeks, so it allowed us to start to see trends developing. Observations were also undertaken by the research team, and our pre and post questionnaires, along with the weekly reports, incorporated both quantitative and qualitative elements. At this point though, I've got to highlight that as a result of COVID-19, we didn't get the student questionnaire response post-intervention that we had hoped for. So as a result, a lot of our findings are based in the qualitative evidence we got from teachers. Additionally, we had planned to conduct more focus groups and to try and follow up on student views from their questionnaires and the observations, but we weren't able to do those either. Next slide.
So I'm going to talk you through what the activity actually looked like that we designed. So students within each class that took part were split into teams of 3 or 4, and they were the same teams each week. So they were accumulating points across the course of the 6 weeks, and there was a prize at the end of the 6-week period as well. We particularly liked the rules that were in the De Napoli article with the basketball, because they gave all of the teams the opportunity to earn points every round, and encouraged them all to join in and actually engage with the questions even when it wasn't their team's turn to choose. So we did get a choice. That element of choice was they could pick from either a lucky dip question, which was often general knowledge and worth 2 points. Sometimes we did chuck a bit of maths in there as well as a bit of a surprise. They could choose a maths question, which was worth 3 points. So that was their incentive to choose the maths over the general knowledge. And later on, from week 4 onwards, the second round also gave them the option of a problem-solving question, which was worth 5 points. So each team, each round, got the opportunity to choose one question. Should they get it right, they got the points. But if they got it wrong, the other teams had the opportunity to steal the points. So they got 1 fewer points, so 1, 2 or 4 points if they stole the answer from another team, which really encouraged them to all actually take part. I'm going to show you some of the questions, and I want to give you the opportunity to join in as well. I know some of you will be itching to solve maths questions this morning. So I will demonstrate the questions. If you don't mind popping an answer in the chat, then I'll know when is a sensible time to move on. That would be really good. Thank you. So a lucky dip question was often general knowledge and might look a little bit like this. So, oh, there we go. So our first lucky dip question was, what is the largest planet in the solar system? Worth 2 points, and they were given 30 seconds. Wow, that was really fast. Thank you, Richard. That was really quick. So yeah, the answer was Jupiter. So if the choosing team got the answer of Jupiter, they will bag the 2 points. But if they got that wrong, then any other team that had written Jupiter down could get 1 point each. So that was our lucky dip. If they were brave and they chose a maths question, they might get something like this. So a probability question with our favourite Harry Potter houses. And again, there were 30 seconds for each team to try and answer this question. Anybody has an answer? Wow, Richard's on fire. Both Richards are on fire. 0.25 is the correct answer. Well done. Let's see if we can do the problem solving just as quickly. So our final example is a problem solving question. A little bit more involved. There we go. So problem solving questions were worth 5 points, and they did get 2 minutes to discuss these ones in their teams. We want to give it a try. Yay, well done. 6 is the correct answer for that one. So again, if the choosing team had got the correct answer, they'd bag all 5 points. If not, then any other team that had 6 written down got the opportunity to steal. So we really did like the way that it gave them all the opportunity to engage with every question. Next slide.
So I'm going to talk you through some more of our findings. Within the pre-questionnaires, teachers were asked to describe their students and their classes in general, so we could get a feel for the students taking part. The responses to this were really quite overwhelmingly negative. A third of the 18 teachers didn't have a single positive comment to make, and only 1 teacher was completely positive about the students. So as a research team, this was quite shocking to read, if I'm honest, and it fueled quite a lot of discussion and debate about what the effects of these attitudes might have on the students. Thankfully though, the teachers' attitudes became a lot more positive post-intervention. So if you look on the screen, the graph shows 2 of the questions that teachers were asked pre and post questionnaire. So the first, what percentage of your class with their current levels of effort in class and work ethic do you believe will achieve their target grade in their maths exams this year? So the graph shows that the percentage of their students that teachers felt would achieve their target grade increases post-intervention, suggesting that teachers have become more positive about their students' prospects. The second question asks, what percentage of your class believe they will not achieve their target grade in their maths exam this year? So as you can see, the percentage decreases, suggesting teachers' views of their students' attitudes towards their own success has become more favourable. It was actually really nice to read as well in a lot of the post questionnaires how teachers were planning to use an activity like this next year because of the positive effects that it was having on their class. Next slide. So it was noted in the earlier weeks in particular that some teachers did struggle to calm their classes following the starter activity and get them back to a normal way of working. We do accept as a research team that no activity is perfect and some tweaks are needed. So timing seemed to be quite a big issue for some teachers. They struggled to stick to the allotted starter activity period. So I don't know if you noticed, but on the earlier slides with Kate, we've already tweaked that a little bit and added a timer to the slides to try and support teachers to stick in to the allotted times, because it can be difficult if the students start to have discussions and want to take it further. The scoring system could also be revised a little bit, possibly, because some students were saying towards the end of the implementation phase that they weren't going to bother answering the questions because they knew that the choosing team would always get it right, so they couldn't steal anything. And also one teacher commented that the questions were too hard, yet another one commented that they were too easy. So we kind of think that this is always going to be a problem when using externally set questions in class. Interestingly though, the students who found the questions too easy clearly didn't concentrate because they subsequently got a lot of the answers wrong. So there's a little bit of learning to be had in that class there. But like we said earlier, one of the most important findings for us, which was mentioned by Nick, is that student communication with one another and with their teachers was improved, and the activity clearly had a positive impact on relationships. So in the graph on screen, this was one of the statements given to the students. I prefer to work on my own in maths, and they had to rate it on a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree. The number of students who agreed with the statement decreases post-intervention, which possibly suggests that students became slightly more favourable towards working with one another following the implementation phase. Now, this is only one class, and it's quite a small class, and it's one of the classes we managed to get pre and post data on. Obviously, because of COVID, we didn't get the entire student cohort. However, the positive impact on relationships and communication has been well documented in the qualitative data that we've got from the teachers. Next slide.
Okay, this slide looks at the pros and cons from both a student and a teacher perspective. The main pros that we found from a student's perspective are all to do with their own motivation and their confidence, which then links directly into an increase in the teachers' beliefs in their students, which Georgina's just covered on the previous slide. And like she said, the attitude, the teachers' beliefs were overwhelmingly poor prior to the trial. But obviously, as the students increase their confidence, the teachers' confidence will also increase. There are a couple of cons for both students and teachers, but again, as Georgina's just mentioned, there are things that are changeable, and some of them have been changed already. Getting the question level right, it's difficult to do that in your own class, let alone setting it for somebody else's class. So maybe teachers setting their own questions, and the disruption to the main lesson, switching from a fun-based competition to standard classroom was difficult in some classes, although other classes maintained the engagement and went through into their normal way of working.
And so finally, just some recommendations that have come out of our little project, and some suggestions that we do have for further exploration. Two of them directly related to the activity. So it was widely documented that there have been this improvement in communication between students and also between student and teachers, which had led to improved relationships within the classroom. So we thought about how we would position this within the curriculum or within the year to support that and make the most of that. As a research team, we thought it would be a useful activity to do right at the start so that we could harness those improvements throughout the whole year. The second thing is those levels of engagement. Many students were really engaged in the starter activity, and it was even reported that they were asking could they do the activity in the lessons when they weren't scheduled to do it, which was really great. But that engagement didn't always continue throughout the remainder of the lesson. Some students switched off once the activity was over. Some students were a bit hyper and found it difficult to focus for the rest of the lesson. So further investigation will be required, we feel, into transitioning from this type of activity into the remainder of the lesson in order that we can harness that engagement and enthusiasm a little bit better. Then in sort of wider exploration, if you like, we did notice from a lot of our pre-questionnaires that teachers reported quite a lot that they didn't think their students saw that their maths was important or particularly relevant to them or would have any use in their future. And this led us to wonder whether, first of all, the students and teachers' understanding of these terms was the same, and how we could maybe think about improving that. We thought perhaps there's a nice link to the contextualisation theme there as well, and if we can contextualise the maths a bit more, that might help them see the relevance and the importance of what they're studying. And finally, I mean, Georgina and Nick have already mentioned that we were quite shocked by a lot of the sort of overwhelmingly negative comments that came out of the pre-questionnaires when teachers were asked to describe the attitudes of their class, or just describe their classes. And it would be interesting to see how the students perceive the attitudes of their teachers, whether they actually pick up on this and the extent to which it impacts on the students' own beliefs in their abilities. We did have a bit of a discussion about whether were these teachers being negative, or were they just being realistic, being more aware of the pass rates of resits and the commitment that's required from students in order to be successful and improve their grade. But we do think that this is a whole area for further investigation. Next slide.
So just to round up, on the screen you can see our reference list from our report, but additionally at the bottom there's a link to our Padlet. So Nick's going to post the Padlet link in the chat. But this Padlet was given to all of our teachers involved, and it just made sure that everything was in the same place. So guidance, journal articles, resources, answers for the teachers, and then the data collection tools. So please feel free to have a look and use any of that. It's open for everyone. And other than that, thank you very much for listening.